Next bit is, you've got to prepare serious amounts of cold, hard evidence. Clients are scared, I've already told you that. In a close run battle, the evidence that you produce in your interview is the next differentiator, and we're going to talk about that more in a couple of minutes. Why? Because you sell on ROI and referenceability, don't you? Why do your customers buy off you? They ask for a reference site. They ask for proof. They want to see another customer using the software in anger and look the guy in the eye and say, how was your investment, mate? But they can't do that when they're buying you. You know, I'm sat here now and I'm talking to a camera. It's a beautiful looking camera. It's mine. It's my personal kit. When I bought that camera, I looked on YouTube for hours on end. I reckon I've watched 200 reviews before I bought that camera. But when they're buying a candidate, when they're buying a revenue generation solution, they can't go on YouTube. They can't look up candidate X on YouTube and get a review. What they want is that. They want to be able to look under the bonnet. They want to know, are you any good at what you do? They want to kick your tires. They want to feel the leather on the seats before they buy it, but they can't. But the smart candidates that get the jobs, the ones that nail it, they lock onto that fact. And they turn up with cold, hard evidence, P60s, proof of deals won, commission sheets, awards, emails from their bosses. And we'll talk about how to use them as we move on. It's about making it easy for the client to say yes to giving you a second interview at the end of the interview. So what sort of evidence should you be taking into an interview? Your P60s, your pay slips. Clients will never ask you for a P60 or a pay slip. I can't remember the last time a client asked a candidate of mine for their P60, but your ability, the ability during an interview to be able to start talking about your target achievement, the ability for you to be able to turn around to the interviewer and say, would you like to see my P60? Is monumentally powerful. The client will go, oh no, that's okay. It's like a bluff in a game of poker. The fact that you've offered it, the fact that you've had the courage to offer it, the fact that you've had the temerity to say, want to look at my P60, mate? That's right, I'm the real deal. I sell stuff and I got the P60s to prove it. And to have them in a folder with you in the interview, that is powerful, powerful, powerful stuff. Some people worry, they go, well, I've had a bad year or two. Well, there's a reason why everybody's looking for a job, and we can come to that. At the end of the video and at the end of this session of Little Films, what we'll do is we'll overcome some of the key objections and we'll work on those as we go. One of the key things I like to see, and one of the key bits of advice if you said to me, what's the best way to do it, is to have a printed document highlighting your achievement to target for at least the last 5 years. You can see there's a diagram of one here on the slides, so that you separate the jobs out, company X, company Y, company Z, and you can separate them into separate roles. And sometimes you don't hit targets. You know, actually, I was talking to a client the other day. He made a great point to me about a candidate who walked into the interview, who turned around and said, listen, if I'm really honest, last year's been a complete disaster for me and I've sold nothing, and that's why I'm looking for a job. And the client said to him, why have you sold nothing? And he said, well, I had a few personal problems at the start of the year. It distracted me. I took my foot off the gas. I didn't do enough prospecting. And by the time I caught back up, I was miles behind and I got fired. And the client went, he's my candidate. I like him. Versus all the other guys who are a little bit blasé, because do you know what? The year before that, he had his P60s and his pay slips. Some of them weren't mega. But what was amazing was when the client said to him, what was your target last year? He'd say it was £884,000. What did you achieve in that year? £716,222. The client went, that's a guy whose targets matter to him. It bothers him whether he is or isn't hitting his target. It bothers him whether he is or isn't living off his basic salary. So you don't have to have year upon year of 120% target achievement, but that graph of achievement against target, when the client turns around to you and says, well, I'm looking for a guy who can prove to me he can hit his targets, I'm looking for a guy who can prove to me he can hit his targets, the ability to pull it out of a portfolio or a folder and put it in front of a client and say, there you go, here's my achievement against target for the last 5 years. That's powerful stuff. award certificates, proof of having gone on club trip, a well done email printed out from your boss. The other one that sometimes people take for granted but should take to interviews are references. Not LinkedIn testimonials because they're too easy to throw away and they're too easy to give. I'm talking about real references. If you're on your way out of a business, particularly, for example, I was talking to a candidate the other day who's in a compromise agreement situation, get a reference to whom it may concern as part of your compromise agreement, or get someone somewhere that you've worked for to sign them. Turn up with a raft of them in a folder. So when the client turns around to you and says, listen, I'm looking for somebody who's a really good guy, you can say, oh, by the way, before I go, I'd just like to leave a copy of some of the references that people have written for me throughout my years in sales, some references throughout my career. That is powerful, powerful stuff. And if I've got two candidates in a campaign and one is sat in the interview with a portfolio, I'm talking about an old-fashioned bloody brag file here. If one of them turns up with his brag file and in it there are P60s, pay slips, a document outlining his achievement against target in graphical visual format over the last 5 years, references, case studies of deals they've won and how they won them. If it's a tight campaign between two candidates and the other guy's just a cheeky, chappy, charismatic salesman with a little bit of pizzazz, I'll tell you now, the guy with the portfolio wins every single time.